Wow, what a three-way matchup we have for you fine folks today. 1997. It was simpler times back then. Well, maybe. Lee Priest, Kevin Levrone, and Paul Dillett. Not in that order, I guess you could say. For the lack of a better term, Kevin Levrone, he actually placed fourth at the Olympia, and he placed ahead of one Paul Dillett and Lee Priest. Paul got fifth, and Lee Priest in sixth, strangely enough. Now, this was probably Lee Priest's best Olympia showing. I believe it was his best in terms of placing. But personally, for the pictures that we have available, I think this is one of the best Lee Priests. Look at the midsection. He is just full. Now, in terms of picture quality of Kevin Levrone, Paul Dillett, this is going to be a little bit debatable. Obviously, the front relaxed position. Kevin Levrone looks like he's kinking up. And as we know, Paul Dillett, he's the king of kinking up. Sometimes he just goes into convulsions. He kind of loses it. But anyway, you guys get the point. Lee Priest, he is always in them poses right away, and he looks like pure perfection. Now, this was a fan request. Let's go to the front double without further ado. This was a fan request from you guys a long time ago, and I owe you a couple of requests from the last poll that I did. The Arnold Classic held this back a little bit. Now, it was just originally a Lee Priest versus Paul Dillett, and this is where it got interesting. I was going to do that comparison, for sure. It's awesome. You know, they got fifth and sixth at the Olympia. It would definitely be worth to take a look at, but Kevin Levrone, I was doing some digging, and I'm not going to say who, but somebody that was there, somebody that was at the Olympia, said there was some sort of fishy business going on with Kevin Levrone's placings, that he was nowhere near as conditioned, things of that nature, as one Lee Priest or even Paul Dillett. And I'm not hating on Kevin Levrone. He is one of my favorite all-time bodybuilders. But I mean, guys, when one bodybuilder is in better condition, should he not place ahead of the other? And it seems to me, muscle separation, things of that nature, I would suggest Lee and Paul Dillett are a little ahead of Kevin Levrone in that aspect. Look at the size of the quads on Paul. I mean, my soul. But there is some feathering in those quads of Lee Priest. If you take a sharp look here, he seems to be the best overall in terms of shape, quality, proportions, things of that nature. I mean, Paul's huge, guys. But at his juncture, at his size, should he not be wider than he is? His arms match his height. What is his clavicle width? V-taper, things of that nature. But it's close, Worth to mention, Lee Priest, forearms, triceps, biceps. These are the best arms ever. Not just in this lineup, but perhaps of all time. Now, what's interesting, and what we do have available, is this. This is the finals. And say what you will about Lee, Kevin, or Paul, they all have their qualities in each pose. But I really don't think that there's any argument here. It looks like to me Lee Priest actually got better for the finals. If not maintained, but I think he looks better, sharper. Things of that nature, more separation. Paul, he probably looks maybe a little bit better as well. But Kevin, I don't know. Maybe I think they might all be a little bit better than they were at the prejudging. Judging by these pictures. But Lee looks like the separation, just the pop. He must have had a couple of cinnamon buns or something. If you eat a big sticky bun with the cinnamon, that white cinnamon just drenched all over top of it, I'm telling you right now, it'll make those muscles zing. Maybe. Here's the front lat spread, for goodness sakes. And I can hear you guys now. But Mark's max muscle. They are all angled. Listen, I'm right there with you if you're complaining about the front lat spread. First of all, this is Lee from the finals. And you can clearly see he is a lot more conditioned. A lot better conditioned than Kevin and Paul. Paul, his condition looks better than Kevin's. Kevin, though, he's the best one in the front lat spread. Perhaps. I'm going off memory, guys. We've all seen these three studs hit the front lat spread. Paul goes like I don't need to convulse for you again, but he's all oblonged. Worth to mention also, if memory serves me correctly, which sometimes it does not, Kevin is a little unsymmetrical in the front lat spread as well. Massive and wide, though. Lee, he's pretty much perfect in this shot, I have to say. He's symmetrical. He looks good, but obviously not as big as the other two dudes. Of course, having said that, this is bodybuilding and condition should be rewarded. Now, the side chest, this is going to be a little bit debatable, of course. Using pictures that are nearly 30 years old from an event that I was not there, I guess the entire comparison's debatable. It's the prejudging for both Lee and Kevin, and Paul Dillett in the finals there. You can see the lighting is awesome, showing just gleaming off that great big man's chest. Now, in terms of size, I'll give it to Kevin Levrone. He is massive here in 97. Bald. First year he came in bald. He was haired at the previous year's Olympia. But having said that, you take a close, sharp look at him and Lee, and you tell me, who's in better condition here? Kevin? Sure, he has a small midsection. They all did in the 90s. But look at how just thin Lee Priest's gut is. When it's that small, it should be against the law to call it a gut, but it's just a little tiny slip of a midsection. But having said that, once again, it is debatable, but we do have these pan-back pictures. These ones are not bad. They're not going to tell you anything about condition, but we just seen that Lee's probably the most peeled dude. And speaking of midsections, now that you see those tiny little wee slips of midsections that they all possessed in the 90s, you tell me, does it not look like Kevin Levrone's just all massive from being a little bit too full, maybe? Maybe not quite as peeled and as conditioned as either Paul or Lee. Paul looks pretty good here, I have to say. Upper body, lower half, condition-wise, separation in those quads. Quad for quad, never really noticed this about Kevin Levrone before, but little bit skimpy compared to those other two non-American studs. That's interesting. Non-American. One from Australia. They talk like this in Australia. And then in Canada, oh yeah, we're gonna go drink maple syrup up in Canada, eh? So that's Paul Dillett, eh? Either that or the Jean qui They're French. They're French. And yes, I'm allowed to make fun of Canadians. I am one. And we love to be made fun of. It's hilarious. But anyway, Kevin Levrone, good hamstring there, just does not, in my opinion, appear to be as conditioned as the other two. And we had other closer up shots to look for sure. And obviously these ones you have to take with all consideration. Now, as far as the back is concerned, this is just Lee and Paul. It's just the rear relaxed as well. But having said that, condition-wise, I think these two dudes were more conditioned than Kevin Levrone. Should they have placed ahead of the Maryland Muscle Machine? Wow. Now that is one wide rear lat spread. Way wider than Lee's. So Kevin's is better, right? Come on. Lee is tilted so thusly that it's not even funny. You're not going to be able to tell anything with this. Now, Paul, I'll admit, his rear lat spread, a little bit weak, I have to say. With all due respect to my fellow Canadian Buckingham Palace, maybe the second best Olympia bodybuilder from Canada. Having said that, guys, here is those pan-back pictures again, and I'll reiterate, Kevin Levrone, all condition equal, he's probably the best bodybuilder out of the three. He's that perfect height range. He's the widest dude. Paul Dillett, he might be wide, but because he's 6'4", 6'3", 2, whatever you want to call it, he's just not wide enough for his height. Obviously. But this is the condition they brought in 1997. And even using these pictures here, you tell me in the comment section below, does it not appear that Lee is a little more separated, a little more hard, dense, grainy than Kevin Levrone? Yes, I think for sure. Absolutely. Now the back double will be of some debate. Pictures, like I said, few and far between. Who is that? Mike? Is that Mike Francois? Is it Mike Francois? Paul's back double a little bit better than his rear lat, but it just looks softer. Not the softer side of bodybuilding. Like Lou Ferrigno's glutes in 93, that was pretty soft. But I mean, come on. It's obvious. Lee Priest is going to beat Paul Dillett in all of the back shots, I would suggest. Now, what about Kevin Levrone? Again, few and far between the pictures. This is a blurry one. Looks like it's edited a little bit. Now, who's that? Let's play who's in the background here. That's Jean-Bidon Pierre Fuchs. That was a bubble gut before bubble guts were fashionable. Ooh, Paul Dillett. Jean-Bidon Pierre Fuchs. He'd have been great in like 2012, 13, 14. He would have been the bubble gut master. The Lord of the Gut. I'm just joking. I'm sorry, Jean-Pierre. Jean-Pierre, if you're watching this, you were great. They would have rewarded you for your gray big muscles. Here is the abs and thigh shot. And just another example of Jean-Pierre's midsection. No, I'm just kidding. Well, kind of, not really. Look at it. It is a whale of a lobbyist. What's it say in the top here? Top athletes are selective in the training advice they accept. Oh, well, yeah. Everybody's going to give you advice. It's hilarious, too. I'll ask people flat out when they give me advice, I say. Now, is that first-hand advice? Did you try this, or did you just read this? Because I can read stuff, too. I can look stuff up, too. But unless you do the adventure, or venture off and do it yourself, and have real experience, you shouldn't be given advice. You get these people, one guy, he'll diet, and he'll train for 30 years, and he'll go, and he'll put the spray tan on, he'll come up and pose, and some genius will come up and say, put your arm that way. There, I told him, and then they'll walk around like they did something. He didn't do nothing. You see, one little phrase, one little sentence on top of the picture gets me thrown down a rabbit hole, for goodness sakes. Lee Priest is winning the abs and thigh. What's going on with Paul? Looks like he's part reptilian. Looks like he's turning into a big king hiss. Next pose. Doesn't he look like a big snake? Kevin has a great abs and thigh. But it's funny, not too many guys back in the 90s would he defeat in this shot. Because they were all so good. Very, very good. But ultimately, guys, Lee Priest, perhaps the best abs and thigh of all time. And in 1997, I would suggest that he was probably in better condition than Kevin Levrone and Paul Dillett, both. So why did he place last out of the three? Could it be his boisterous nature? His ability to speak the truth? Some people don't like that. Some people get suspended from the IFBB for things of that nature. But you know what? It is that type of attitude that makes Lee Priest one of, if not the most popular bodybuilders nowadays. I believe he's Nick Strength and Power's favorite bodybuilder. I believe he is. But anyway, the Australian native places 6th at the 1997 Mr. Olympia event. And after hearing people talk about it, things of that nature, looking at all the pictures, I wouldn't have complained if Lee Priest had placed 4th. He could have easily got 4th. And then who was 3rd? Sean Ray? Sean Ray versus Lee Priest, both 1997. That's also a great comparison. So there's no telling how badly some of these guys were perhaps robbed. And I don't like to use that word. That's why I said perhaps. For those of you who are going to get upset in the comment section below, Kevin, he does look good, guys. He does look good. I don't know if he's as crispy, peeled, and as ready as Lee Priest was. And Paul, he looked good too, guys. Structurally speaking, I know that sounds weird, but Kevin kind of had him beat because he's looks wider in the delts, things of that nature. But of course, the shaking of Paul, that's going to keep him down too. So, having said that, Kevin was a good poser as well. Just my opinion. I was not there. Kevin Levrone placed 4th. Levrone placed 4th. 5th to Paul Dillett. And 6th to Lee Priest. Let me know in the comment section below. Where would you have these guys placed if you were a judge? Have a nice one.